Keep on moving forward, never turning back. That sure is the way that I felt coming to the end of 2020. I don't know about the rest of you, but I could take a wild guess that you were just as happy to see it go as I was. And, of course, I know that most of us realize that it's magical thinking to think that everything will change at the turn of a new year. But there's always a little bit of hope, especially in a year like the one we just came out of, which we have not experienced before. A global pandemic, a summer of protests and reckoning, a fall of politics not as usual, and now a winter of insurrection, uncertainty, change, hope, and ongoing fear have us on the national front facing things we never dreamed of. Or if we did, we hoped we were wrong and that we had been reading too many dystopian novels. Many of us have hoped that in this time of upheaval we would find our way to some necessary reinvention of our nation and our world. Clearly, if things have been going this badly, particularly with the pandemic, then what we've been doing up to this point was not working. I've spoken before about this idea in a sermon I offered here and elsewhere in the fall of 2019 titled Reinventing Ourselves. I spoke of the necessity of reinvention on individual, congregational, denominational, and national levels. I quipped, rather cleverly, if I may say so myself, that necessity is the mother of invention, of reinvention, rather. Necessity is the mother of reinvention. We change because we have to, because circumstances lead us to ask the hard question, who are we now? I know at a church level you've had some experience with reinvention as well, as have most congregations across all faiths, as we've gone virtual and learned new tech and all those things we've talked about 1,000 times in the past 10 months, so I won't dwell on that point. But I do want to acknowledge and congratulate those of you who are here, because it's hard enough as it is to do church well. And so the fact that you're here with each other, learning how to do it differently, maintaining your interconnected web as you try to figure out who you are now as a church is admirable. That is the work of church, the work of covenants, the work of community. It is in seeing ourselves reflected in familiar others and the shared identity of congregation that we find some solace, confidence, and steadiness in the process of reinvention, both as church and as individuals. On an individual level, I don't know anyone who has not been changed by this year, who isn't still figuring out exactly how it has changed them, because we're still in the middle of that change. We're still in a place of flux, waiting for the other side to appear, so that we can come out of it, look behind us, and get some perspective. We've had many, many, many losses. We've lost loved ones. We've lost our jobs, our income. Many of us have had to change the way we work, the way that we parent, no matter how old our kids are. We've had to change the way we grocery shop, the way we celebrate, the way we mourn. We've had to change just about everything, not by choice, but by necessity. But again, necessity is the mother of reinvention. Humans like a sense of normalcy. We don't often change just because we want to. We tend to like having security, financial, emotional, social. We like to be able to trust our environment, our government, each other, ourselves, the air we breathe. And this year has challenged all of those things that we take for granted. It has changed all of them. And there is no going back, only forward. We have to reinvent ourselves. We will never again be who or where or when we used to be. But how do we reinvent ourselves individually, as a congregation, as a nation, as a world, when we don't quite know where we're going? What do we need for the journey? Who do we want to become? And what are our options in that becoming? I need to know who I am now to determine who I want to become, right? And if I don't know who I am now, because so many of the ways I've defined myself have changed, I need to connect with who I've always been, the core, unchanging elements of myself, like where and whom I came from, what I have loved, how I've chosen to live my life, and what I have learned from it, the principles that have guided me. It's a lot to put in perspective. Something that's helped me with this in recent weeks is my exploration of Norse spirituality, which is the indigenous religion of my Swedish ancestors. In the Norse cosmology, fate is what shapes the universe and all beings within it. Not fate in the way I've always thought of it, like the way people in romantic movies ask each other, "Do you believe in fate?" Which is really more akin to destiny, or what is supposed to happen to us, the everything happens for a reason thing. No, for the Norse, fate is more like what I've come to call the process. It is the things that were put in motion long before we were born, and or by other people in other times and places. It is what we cannot change no matter how hard we try. However, this doesn't mean that nothing is changeable. Fate has a second component, the choices and actions of individuals and collectives, which alter the course of things for those to come. And sometimes for us, if we're lucky, or unlucky, if we choose unwisely. Fate both shapes us and is shaped by us. It is all that is our life, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, mixed. To think of life in this way is clarifying and relieving to me. It makes sense in a way that predestination never did. It seems just, if not always fair. On an individual level, it gives me agency over the things I can change and relieves me of responsibility for what I can't. It narrows my field of choices so that they are not so overwhelming, and this enables me to take action. On the level of congregation and faith tradition, this idea of fate aligns with my understanding of the principles we UU congregations affirm and promote, and how they work together. Specifically, the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the seventh, respect for the interconnected web of existence of which we are all a part, and how we hold these in tension. Every person is a unique entity in the universe. Fate has culminated in each of us in ways that can never be replicated, and each of us has something to contribute to the whole. Every life is sacred, and no person is an island. We are all part of fate, shaping and shaped by the web. We are, as Martin Luther King Jr. put it, in an inescapable network of mutuality. The principles in between 1 and 7 give us guidance for how to care for that network and all within it, to navigate the process that is fate, to hold our individual threads of the web in tension with the whole. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations are all equally important elements of Principle 2, ensuring that we act with both head and heart, accountability to the collective and mercy for the individual, acceptance of one another individually, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations collectively keep us balanced in community and autonomy in Principle 3. Fourth comes a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We are each free to find truth in whatever calls to us individually, while ensuring that our practice is responsible to the collective, to other people and faith traditions. The right of individual conscience and the use of the collective democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, Principle 5, of course, ensures that no one person overrules the whole, and that the whole attempts to respect and protect the individual. So too with the goal of world community, collective, and peace, liberty, and justice for all individuals. This reminds us of the larger implications of our faith in the world, that these are not theoretical or abstract ideas, but beliefs with teeth that inform our actions and affect real people and communities, that have the power to change our world. This is who we are as a faith, who we have always been, who we aspire to be. We are a living tradition, so reinventing ourselves is part of our calling. That is how the study commission for an eighth principle came to be. And that new eighth principle, which congregations across the country and the world have been voting to adopt for themselves, is to me a model of what happens when we care for and respect the interdependent web and all individuals within it. The language of this principle is that we affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. We have been called to reinvent ourselves as a faith, called from within our own global UU community by UU people, many lifelong, like myself, who have experienced and witnessed various forms of injustice and oppression from UU individuals and institutions, who were certain they were, and those people and institutions who did this oppression were certain they were above such things. We are called by our democratic process to question our assumptions about what we already know and what we're already good at. Called by our democratic processes that have discussed, debated, studied, and voted on this language. Called by our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Called by our acceptance of one another and our drive for spiritual growth, which is often uncomfortable, even as it is ecstatic. And we are called by our imperative for justice, equity, and compassion in our relations as humans with inherent worth and dignity, making up the web of existence, a fate of all that is our life. And so we find, as we locate ourselves within our faith tradition, to figure out who we have always been, who we are at our core. We find in this location a reminder of who we are as humans, who people through generations and millennia before us have been. How no matter how apocalyptic things may seem right now, our species and our planet have been through apocalypses before and survived, adapted, grown, thrived. Progress, though not a straight shot upward, has been steady. As Unitarian minister Theodore Parker said in 1871, when speaking of slavery and Reconstruction, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. That arc is the core of who and what we have always been. Our role as shapers of fate is to bend it. So we reinvent ourselves in the pandemic and post-pandemic landscape. We, as individuals, as a faith, as a human family, are called to bend that arc further. Your faith can ground you and guide you in your thinking, decisions, words, and actions as you strive to do so, to determine who you are now and whom you are becoming. Change is impossible if we do what we've always done, and so we must do something new, even when we are forced to, and maybe especially then. We don't always have a choice about whether change comes, but we may choose how to live into it. And that requires us to be honest with ourselves about where we are now, how we got here, and what direction we want to grow from this point. Who do you want to become this year? What action will you take to consciously live into it? How will you use what fate has given you? As you explore these questions individually, as a church community, and as citizens of a global community, may fate guide you, as our closing hymn will proclaim, to sing your praise and thanks for all that is your life. Sorrow, joy, work, rest, all life is a gift, precious and fleeting, and we are called to use it, to build the common good, and to make our own days glad. Work and play are important. And so as you go forward in your day and your week and your year of 2021, may you find that guidance in your fate and your faith. May it be so.